Дело шло к вечеру, ряды редели. Ну давайте начинать.
Okay, let's begin. My name is Alexander Korotkov. I'm committer from Postgres professional. My presentation is about what to expect from Postgres 13. I will tell you right away that my second presentation will be a little bit more boring because I cannot draw a picture for every new feature of the Postgres, but I will try to tell something interesting about Postgres. I will tell you right away that there will be no revolutionary features in Postgres 13. It's more evolutional release. When already existing features we develop and we add something useful. The presentation will contain only features. I will not tell you about bugs, because bug fixes, there are a lot of them. And for some reason, I decided to remove commit messages about the features. It's impossible to read everything in this presentation, but later you can look the slides and to find the commit messages in Git and to study them, because in Postgres committers are very responsible about commit messages, and when you read them you can pump your skills very significantly. Release is not yet combined. There will be March commitfest, and many features may be committed in Postgres, but at the moment we can tell about what's already committed, and it will be in the new release with a 99% probability. Because it almost never happens when we committed something to Postgres and then we decide to remove it. And what's not yet committed, I will tell you also during my presentation, because they're likely to be committed. But what's the probability? It's like to meet the dinosaur in the street. It's 50%. You either meet it or not. So it's hard to give an exact forecast if they will be committed or not. Let's talk about performance. Speeding up of read only in PGCL, partial decompression of toast, and the pre-computation of immutable function in the table. So the idea is as follows. I will start with the last improvement. It's a convenient way to write a full text request in Postgres. It's like this. We have a function to query, which forms our TS query. We're using it to filter and we're using it to calculate the range. But it was a slow solution since recently, because the constant is hidden under the alias of the table. Estimates were removed, but in Postgres 13 it will start to work normally in the same way as if you put TSS query instead of every entrance into the pool. Also about acceleration of the read-only. In PGSQL, sometimes we encounter immutable expressions, for example, e equals e plus 1, and PGPSQL, the problem was that this immutable sentence took snapshot, and if you listened to my previous presentation, you know what problems may occur if you take snapshots from Postgres. And of course, we should not take snapshots from such things. And this optimization in Postgres already happened, but only if your function PGPSQL is read-only. And now it's available also for read-write. Partial toast decompress. You already know if you're writing some big value, let's say 1 megabyte string, then it cannot be stored in the page because the page is 8 kilobytes, and this is why we have a toast storage for this purpose. And until the recent times, if you go to the compressed data in toast, then they would be taken out of there and decompressed. And this is not efficient, because if you need to take something from your string, some small part of it, you will have to take this 1 megabyte or 1 gigabyte as a whole. This was not efficient. Now it's much more efficient. In the core, it's supported for the substring to query to the beginning of the string, but this feature was routed for by PostgreSQL, and it's being used in its full potential. But PostgreSQL, it stores in a way that it has a big geometrical object, and in the beginning there is a rectangle, for example. And some filtration can be done, for example, using this rectangle, which is stored in the very beginning, and we do not need to decompress the whole geometrical object. I've just talked about the immutable function, some more performance features and optimization from our Postgres Pro developer, acceleration of JSON-B functions. I will not comment too much because this is optimization within the code, which just gives a certain increase in performance. Speed truncate. The meaning of this feature is that situation occur when the table is shortened. For example, there is vacuum, which found that in the end we have pages which are empty, and it will shorten the table. And at the same time, we need to remove all the buffers from shared buffers, which were related to this tail which we're cutting. But it was not optimized, because this table in Postgres, it has not just the data, but also the visibility map, free space map. We call these things forks, and several times it could scan the shared buffer for each of these forks. And as shared buffers, we put several gigabytes. This is done within one scanning in Postgres 13, and it speeds things up about 3 times. There is another feature, old snapshot threshold, which tells us which snapshots in the database we consider as old, to get the snapshot to old error as in Oracle. But this option could not work correctly with indexes, and which were shown in old snapshot. This bug has been identified recently, and it required an invasive fixing, and we decided to document it in version 12 and to fix it in version 13. If you are using listen notify, then in Postgres 13 it works much better. If you have a lot of listeners, let's say hundreds of listeners in version 13, you will be able to get a big boost to your performance. But to be honest, I've never used listen notify. But those who are using will definitely notice an improvement. Another patch which I committed, this patch which improves the situation with Gene full scan. Because the problem was that sometimes in Gene there is a full scan situation which it cannot perform, and it will have to go through the whole index. For example, Gene is a reverse index, and if you have a search request containing only negative value, and Gene, using this posting lists, cannot find that it's missing. So he is like a sculptor who just cuts off everything which is not necessary. But if you have several conditions, then Postgres was inefficient previously. If you have several conditions for the same column, then one of them you can use to find the necessary value, and the next option you can use for filtering and to exclude something thanks to it. Recently we had to do full scan, and now we can avoid the full scan in the cases where it's possible, and the queries became much faster. Now some more features. Generation of UID in core. Now we have in the core a random generation of UUID. It's much more convenient. Corruption error code. If you have data corruption case, which is determined by checksums, the error code will tell you if it's corruption of data or index. Sometimes it can be useful, this information. There is another type in Postgres, PGLSN. This type gives you position, and basically it's 8 bytes integer, which is shown in a certain format with timeline, but basically for this type it didn't have enough operations, and now at least so we're able to do something in the database. We created a min and max aggregates. If you store LSN somewhere, you can find the minimum position in all replicas, for example, or something similar. FTS for Greek language. We updated the dictionaries, Snowball, and automatically, as they started to support Greek language, and all the configuration of Postgres has been also updated to support the Greek language. If somebody needs it, you can use it. For all users who are using the Greek language. Well, never mind. We have another feature, create database local. The meaning is that it enables to create simultaneously LC collate and LC C-type. Vacuum. How it worked in Postgres, it deleted everything from heap, and then it cleaned the links from the indexes. And based on the indexes, it went through them one by one, and in version 13 of Postgres, there is a parallel scanning through different indexes, and the patch actually was bigger initially, and even parallel processing of heap was available, but there were a lot of questions to this patch, and we decided to commit only the minimum working part, which is very useful itself, because at least according to my own experience, the indexes consume a lot of time in vacuum. When you roll the val, if the page is invalid, then it was impossible to do something with this. Now we have an option, config parameter, which can ignore invalid pages. But it can lead to problems. For example, you can lose data, server can fail, but still it increases your chances. Despite the corruption of data, you can recover at least something. Next features. Logging. Which kind of problem one can encounter? If you log in the queries, then the problem may be that often you cannot log all the queries because it will consume more resources than performance of these queries. And Postgres 13 will enable you to perform sampling. and to log not all the queries but only the random ones with a certain probability, just those which we will log. And there is a minimum duration for this sampling, so we log everything starting from a certain duration and with certain probability. JSON path. This is my commit. With Nikita Glukhov it was developed. We have a long list of developers. And the idea is that JSON path I committed in Postgres 12. And date time was not ready at the time. In version 13, we finally committed the datetime method, but the peculiarity about it is as follows. The function which I committed in Postgres 12 were mutable. All the functions which must give the same result for the same arguments. And datetime is not always immutable, and sometimes it needs time zone, and time zone is a very tricky thing, because sometimes it requires a variable and also sometimes it has to be updated. Because in different countries, sometimes the rulers have hallucinations and they move time, and nothing can be done about it, unfortunately. So we added the function separately supporting the time zone and without it. And if you're working without time zone support, the function is immutable, but you cannot refer to time zone. Or the function will be stable, but you can refer to time zone. So you can choose either one or another. Everything is in your hands. In Postgres, there is a custom statistics. Okay, let's say extended statistics, not custom. Correlation between columns, for example, the most often pairs of values from different columns, etc. Previously, it was impossible to set its size, and in version 13, it became possible. Force drop database. Previously, in Postgres, if you perform drop database, then it had to wait until everyone would disconnect from the database, and it could kill. Now it can kill all the connections to the database if you need to delete it urgently. Previously, we had a function PGTerminate backend, and it looked who was connected to the database and removed them. And drop database force is similar, just in a little bit different presentation. Now, functions GCD and LMC, it's like knock and node. They are calculated in a tricky way. I'm not sure why do we need that in the database, but anyway, we have it and it's great. JSON bset, lux. The problem was that JSON bset was a function which took some field in JSON, and the peculiarity of strict function is that if its one argument is null, then the result will be null. But with JSON bset, it led to the situation when you are trying to write null in some field, and you put SQL null, not JSON null, and all the field became null. And the users who did it like this, they just lost their JSONs. In order to avoid this problem, we created a separate function. We created JSON bset lux, which works differently, and if it's null, then It can be configured in a certain way, its behavior. For example, use JSON null, return target, delete key. So it can be configured what happens if JSON be field, you're trying to put SQL null. Analyze. Now analyze, you can monitor the progress of analyze command. There is a separate view to monitor this. Client utilities. PGToast. Previously, when you looked in the table, which was called PGToast, something you could not understand the reference of this toast. Now it's supported, and the indexes can be shown, and the parent table as well. \A describes not just index access but table access methods as well, and I doubt that you will have a lot of useful I doubt that it will be useful in the 13th version. Autocomplete, create or replace, it's clear. PGBench. PGBench now can test and benchmark the partitioning. So it can take and departition the table with a method which you will put in the comment line. VacuumDB now supports parallel option, several jobs. So basically these were all the features which were committed. Now we have important information that Postgres is not using anymore the slave term, which is not politically correct. It's kind of funny, but well, we're not native speakers. For us, slave means just slave. It doesn't have this literal meaning. If we had a documentation in Cyrillic and saying the same terms in Russian, master-slave, then maybe we would have to quit this terminology. So for Russian-speaking people, it doesn't make any difference. But in replication, instead of slave, we're using standby, and in partitioning, we're using root. So, what else will be committed? There is a big list. Maybe most of it will not be committed, but still it's interesting to review. Our colleague Nikita Glukhov is working on the support of SQL JSON, especially standard clauses, big patch. I doubt that we will commit them, but we remember about them. Incremental materialized view maintenance is a big and complex patch. I doubt that it will be committed, but it's really cool. Any compatible. It's an improvement of processing of different types of functions which receive a random number of information, like collect, etc. Insert set, this is an interesting patch, which is basically like a syntax sugar. But the problem is that when there is different syntax for insert and update, when you do update, you set column equals value, and when you insert values, you put the list of columns and list of values separately. And you make these queries, generate them from the application, and it's not very convenient, and manually it's also not very convenient. So this extension is quite useful. I think it's already done in MySQL, and in Postgres it will be implemented probably as well. reindex table space. When you perform reindex of a table, all indexes are created from scratch, and it would be nice to have a possibility to put them in other table space. And this is under discussion. Create or replace trigger. Instead of dropping trigger, if you want to change something, you can tell it create or replace. Incremental sort. This is a patch which initially I wrote in 2013, and the idea is that if you have index which can give you result from column A and you're writing order A, B, you don't have to resort it from scratch. You can take these groups with equal values of column A and sort them in column B. But it's complicated. In order this patch never leads to regression and to planner, for scheduler to perform correct estimation. It was very difficult. I was tired, but community now is taking over this work, and maybe sometimes it will be committed.
Our patch from Postgres Pro to delete the self-joins, auto-prepare allows us to cache the plans not only for the requests where you have the prepare and execute, but to all of them together and to automatically cut out parameters out of them. Canon B3, this is the search of your closest neighbors in B3. So, for example, you're looking for the search for events that are the closest in time to the current one. So it seems that the search for the closest neighbors, so the B3 gives us a single dimensional space where we can search either forward or backwards. So you need two scans for B3, one forward, one backwards, out of which we take the closest elements and take the nearest ones. B3 is double. Because it's a really cool patch, because in Postgres, especially in the ICC, in the B3 indices, and not only in BTI, but also in B3, the largest, the most widely used index, and you start running into a lot of doubles, and in order for those doubles to be not fully double from the keys parameters, but for them to only be serviced in the just makes it all around better. We hope it'll be in the 13th version. Right now, Nasty Lubenikov is working on it, but in the community, we also have a lot of people joining this development. Victor Gaging, for example, and his developments, and we have a lot of hope that it's going to be part of the version 13. Index skip scan is if you want to take and choose unique parameters and you have settings for this column, then if you have the first one, and if you do the search on the indices, we are making the search for the next. So you can just skip along it, and right now you can do it with a hack through recursive, and the index skip scan is how to do it natively. The hash group on disk is the problem of the following nature. Right now the hash aggregate in the Postgres only works in memory. And the planner tries to evaluate for the memory to not go beyond the work memory. But life is like that, and the planner can make mistakes, and you can even summon norm killer with the aggregate. And this is the patch that allows the hash aggregate to work with the data on the disk. If you mean self-optimized node, is an optimization. If you have a node for materialize and it is inside, let's say, of a certain nested loop, and they turn out that it's empty, and for the nested loop to not try to scan it multiple times, but could understand that they don't have results and straight away bring it back up to the top. Now, Group B optimization is the patch of Fyodor Sigayev, and I'm not sure if somebody pushes it into the 13th version right now, but for example, you have an index, and it has certain columns inside, and then you have group by. And the order of columns in group by may not match the indices, but the group by doesn't really care. And why should we not just use this index anyway? And then we can also have order by. And then order by already has a different order than group by. And for group by to be able to adapt to look, it doesn't really, the order doesn't matter. He just needs a group of the set columns. Now partitioning, there is an improvement for the join of two partitioned. There is an improvement for the join partition and non-partition tables, and there is one more improvement. Before we could partition just the main table, we could only we could logically replicate it as a whole, but not just the partition. And in the version 13, hopefully we'll be able to replicate a certain partition of the main table. Another interesting set of patches, filtering in the logical replication. So inside the logical replication, you can set the conditions of where and replicate not the entire table, but only what matches certain conditions. The generic type subscription is for you to be able to address to not only the arrays through the square brackets, but also JSONB, and to get certain keys out of it through using the square brackets, and through the same ones to be doing an update. And the global temporary tables, I think that we understand what this is, right? In Postgres, they have expanded statistics, and I've already spoken about it, but its correlation between the columns is the most frequent meanings for the set columns, but previously it didn't work well. If for one query you could have a number of these statistics used, and right now it is going to be working much better. Breen indices, their point is that usually for a certain block you store, well, right now you have the min and max stored, and if your data are physically correlated to their meanings, then it is a very compact and efficient index. And here we make an improvement so that you have not only a min and max, but a multi-range, so a number of ranges that will cover all of the values that are in the blocks, or a Bloom filter that also for the same blocks. I think that this is a great patch that greatly improves the efficiency of the Breen indices, but in order for us to do this, we need. Now, this is all good if we do it with the parameters, so that we could set the amount of these ranges. But here we also already have our patch from Nikita Glukhov, which allows us to set these parameters as a whole. And a bit more. A bit more various patches. PG Bench allows us to not only generate the pseudo-random numbers, but also the pseudo-random movements, meaning the execution of the orders in a pseudo-random order. And then you have my patch to improve the concurrency of the rename for Windows, which we frequently saw that a bad concurrency for Windows has led to issues. For the users of once, you have my patch for this. It was criticized, and I'm going to be reworking it. And maybe I'll have time to get it to the 13th version because it's a very small patch. Now, stats collector in Postgres traditionally has been working in some strange ways of interaction, and I already forgot some, but it either listens to the socket or writes some files or something. So basically, it's a patch which we need to rework in order for it to interact properly with the shared memory. And one more improvement for that when vacuum is reporting a mistake, for it to be able to display the number of the page on which this mistake has taken place. Whew. That's it. I'm at the end. Thank you very much for the attention. And I don't know, maybe this was boring, but I hope that you heard something useful. Thank you very much for your attention, and I'm ready to take any questions that you may have. And thank you very much for the presentation. What is your forecast for the different types of hubs? Like, we've seen the story that you have the Z trip, and is there some understanding of when can we expect this to happen? Yes. Now regarding zhip, we're expecting the startup version to be in Postgres 14. Now regarding the column storage, maybe we'll also see this in the 14 version, but we're not expecting to see new storages in the 13th version. Yes, the storages will come in the 14th version. Okay, one more question? Yes, please. Alexander, thank you very much. The connection of the RLS and the waterproof function, this is something that allows us to significantly speed up the execution of the query. Are there going to be any changes on the improvement of performance here? Which function? Well, for example, you have the RLS working, and in the conditions they're using a function. For example, they are ignoring the search index function. Well, you have the leak pro function, and you have, we put leak proof. Yeah, so the leak proof improves the general performance. Are there going to be any improvement on the performance of the RLS, or is there any shifts in this, or is there going to be something new? I don't really get it. What can we improve? If the function is not safe, well, you can't optimize it. Okay. In any case, I don't know that anything has been improved in this direction, and I have no idea what can be improved. This is the way I'm going to put it. Well, okay, yes, I've probably phrased the question badly, but the function of the use of the RLS policy, maybe we need to at least say that it is safe to use now. Maybe I'm just not aware of the topic enough. Yes, sorry. It's a good question, but it's just that, do forgive me, I just am probably unqualified or don't know, I don't understand what we're talking about right now. Yes, hello, good day. Maybe you have some shifts in the automative sectioning, partitioning, because before we didn't have any declarative sections. We were creating them through triggers as we were inserting data into it. And then right now these triggers no longer work, because the query on the sectioning table is being blocked, is blocking the creation of a new section. And we're fairly frequently met with the issues that we would like to create a section for a month, for example. No, I don't know if there are any patches regarding this topic. I can't remember any. We had such functionality in our extension, the PG Passman, and we had an idea for us to move from the Passman to vanilla, but we have not done it yet. And I can offer you a support, a crutch, that you can, from this trigger, make an, I forgot how it's called, an extension that connects the DB-Link. Yeah, exactly, through DB-Link, for example. Through DB-Link to just create this partition. Because I cannot come up with anything else on the go, on the fly right now. I'm sorry, but not yet. And one more question. Thank you very much for the presentation. And if we have a column, for example, the toast byte A, and we are writing down, and we're just adding certain data to the update, it is also fully unpacked, then packed, and in the 13th, in the 13th is going to be the case as well. You're going to fully unpack and repack, because the improvements only concern the unpacking of the part that is from the very beginning, and the read-only is only in terms of writing, nothing has really improved significantly, and I also have not seen patches of the sort yet as well. Thank you very much. Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you for the presentation. Should we be expecting some new types of data encryption, for example, the full encryption of database? We're discussing such possibilities. I definitely have seen these discussions on the mailing list. Unfortunately, I'm not very well versed in full encryption, but I've definitely seen the discussion on the topic. I do not think that it's going to be part of the 13th version, but maybe on the 14th, I think that we may see something in the making. I've definitely seen work on the subject, yes. Yes, please, next. That's it. Well, I guess that's it then. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you.